Why does this lake keep boiling even in the middle of winter? And how did a forest of trees end up growing from ancient lava? If you thought that's wild, wait until you find out what people used to race across a desert made entirely of salt. These questions lead us to some of the most extreme, beautiful, and bizarre places in America. But they're just the beginning. Across all 50 states, nature has carved, cracked, melted, and exploded the land into something unbelievable and often unexplored. This is a journey into the wild, the strange, and the jaw-dropping corners of the United States. These are the wonders of America. Picture Hawaii in your mind. You're probably seeing palm trees, beaches, and maybe some surfers catching waves. Now throw all of that out the window, because we're heading to Waimea on the Big Island, where cowboys ride horses through misty pastures, and you might need a jacket in paradise. Waimea sits 2,600 feet above sea level, tucked between two massive volcanoes. The town feels more like Montana than the tropics. Rolling green hills stretch toward the horizon, dotted with cattle that graze peacefully under frequent rainbows. When morning fog rolls in, it transforms the landscape into something almost magical. Here's what makes this place incredible. You can literally drive from desert lava fields to this cool grassy plateau in under an hour. While tourists down at sea level are sweating in 85-degree heat, Waimea residents are pulling on sweaters as temperatures drop into the 60s. The Parker Ranch made this transformation possible. Founded in 1847, it sprawls across 130,000 acres and brought Hawaiian cowboys called paniolo to the islands decades before cattle drives became famous in the American West. These weren't your typical cowboys either. They blended Portuguese, Hawaiian, and Mexican ranching traditions into something entirely unique. Above Waimea, Mauna Kea's summit hosts world-class telescopes that peer deep into space. The dry air and minimal light pollution create perfect conditions for astronomy. You're literally looking at a place where Hawaiian culture, ranching heritage, and cutting-edge science intersect in the most unexpected way. What happens when a narrow arm of land stretches defiantly into the Atlantic, sculpted by ice and seasoned by centuries of salt and story? Welcome to Cape Cod, a windswept peninsula off Massachusetts that curves like a beckoning finger into the sea. Shaped by glaciers over 20,000 years ago, it's a living landscape where dunes shift, waves bite, and lighthouses guard against fog and memory. Contrast is everywhere. Winter brings icy solitude and crashing nor'easters that send storm-battered fishing boats racing for shelter in Chatham Harbor. Then summer arrives with its crush of tourists drawn by salt air, fried clams, and stretches of soft sand. You might witness a whale breach off Provincetown's coast one morning, then walk an eerily quiet beach that was packed with families just hours before. The Cape tells a story of constant change. Some parts retreat more than 3 feet per year, making this ancient land vanish before our eyes. Over 400 freshwater kettle ponds dot the landscape, gifts from melting glacial ice. Cranberry bogs paint autumn fields deep red. Piping plovers nest on protected beaches, while great white sharks patrol offshore waters, following booming seal populations. The Pilgrims first landed here before Plymouth. Later, artists, writers, and presidents made it their haven. When engineers completed the Cape Cod Canal in 1914, they turned the Cape into a literal island, forever changing how ships navigate these waters. What happens when time, wind, and water carve an ocean floor into a cathedral of stone, stranded in the middle of the Great Plains? You get the Badlands of South Dakota, where rugged spires and deep gorges rise from layered rock that once sat beneath a shallow sea. Erosion sculpted this alien world, where striped buttes stand like forgotten monuments and grasslands stretch to the horizon. The extremes hit you immediately. This place swings from blazing heat to brutal cold, from fragile beauty to silent danger. Rainfall stays rare, yet flash floods tear through dry ravines without warning. The soft rock crumbles at your touch, but fossilized bones inside have lasted millions of years. Picture bighorn sheep navigating sheer cliffs, while paleontologists carefully unearth the jaws of ancient saber-toothed cats just miles away. Walk in one direction and you'll find sun-cracked wasteland. Turn around and you'll see lush prairie, bursting with wildflowers and bison. "65 million years ago, volcanic ash and sediment built up layer by layer on an ancient seabed, creating one of North America's richest fossil beds. The Lakota people called it Mekosika, meaning land bad, not worthless, just harsh. Later, homesteaders came, chasing dreams but left broken by drought. Despite its harsh appearance, the Badlands support amazing life. Prairie dogs chatter in underground cities, while rattlesnakes hunt in the shadows. Golden eagles soar overhead as burrowing owls peek from their holes. In the grasslands, endangered black-footed ferrets have made a remarkable comeback after near extinction. Some places feel like they were never meant to be seen. Crater Lake is one of them. Picture this: you're standing on the rim of what was once Mount Mazama, a towering volcano in southern Oregon. "8,000 years ago, this mountain exploded with such force that it expelled 12 cubic miles of magma into the sky. The mountain literally collapsed in on itself, creating a massive bowl nearly 6 miles wide. What filled that bowl over thousands of years became the deepest lake in the United States. The water here reaches down almost 2,000 feet, and it's so pure you can see over 100 feet down in some spots. No rivers flow in or out. Rain and snowmelt are the only sources filling this giant basin. The result? Some of the clearest water on Earth, so blue it almost hurts to look at. In the middle of all this perfection sits Wizard Island, a small volcanic cone that pokes up from the water like nature's reminder of the violence that created this place. Winter brings snow so deep it buries the rim in 40-foot drifts, while summer paints wildflowers around cliffs that drop straight into that impossible blue. The most surreal part? A tree stump called the Old Man of the Lake has been floating upright in the water for over a century, drifting slowly with the wind like a wooden ghost, keeping watch over this hidden world. Before Chicago rose from the prairie, Galena ruled the Midwest. This small Illinois town commanded the region's economy when most of the state was still wilderness. Tucked into the rolling hills of northwestern Illinois, Galena became the busiest port between St. Louis and St. Paul during the 1800s. Lead mining drove this boom, turning a frontier settlement into a powerhouse that shaped American history. The town's cobblestone streets and red brick storefronts still look exactly as they did during Lincoln's presidency. Gas lamps flicker along Main Street each evening, casting shadows on buildings that witnessed the Civil War era firsthand. But here's what makes Galena truly remarkable. Time forgot about it completely. When steamboats disappeared and railroads chose different routes, the town simply stopped growing. That abandonment became its greatest gift. Today, over 85% of Galena sits on the National Register of Historic Places. You can walk into shops housed in structures from the 1850s and stay overnight in bed and breakfasts that once sheltered Civil War officers. The town produced 9 Union generals, including Ulysses S. Grant, who lived here before becoming president. Grant's leather goods shop still stands on Main Street. The landscape itself tells an ancient story. Galena sits in the driftless area, where glaciers never reached. These untouched bluffs and valleys create an unusually rugged profile for Illinois. Lead sulfide deposits, called Galena by miners, drew fortune seekers from around the world to these hills. What do you get when an ancient lake vanishes, leaving behind a crust of salt so flat you can see the curve of the earth? You get the Bonneville Salt Flats, a 30,000-acre expanse of hard white salt near the Utah-Nevada border. Here, the sky meets the earth in a near-perfect mirror. What remains today is a ghost of Lake Bonneville, a massive Ice Age lake that once covered much of western Utah. The setting feels alien, bone dry, blindingly bright, and impossibly vast. In summer, heat shimmers off the ground like dancing ghosts. In winter, shallow water pools across the flats, turning them into a surreal sheet of reflective glass. One day, you'll find sun-cracked desert where land speed records get shattered. Another day, you'll discover a hauntingly still water world where sky and ground become indistinguishable. Lake Bonneville dried up over 14,000 years ago. As the water receded, it left behind thick layers of salt and minerals. Some parts of the flats reach over 5 feet deep in pure salt crust. Since 1914, racers have used this natural speedway to break world records topping 600 miles an hour. The surface stays so uniformly flat that engineers consider it ideal for high-speed testing. While it seems lifeless, the flats support microbial life. For the Gashute people and other native groups, these flats served as a known landmark. The Bonneville salt flats are earth stripped to its essentials, flat, white, blinding, and infinite. Salt clings to your skin, the sun hangs low and golden, and the road seems to float between sky and sea. Welcome to the Florida Keys. This chain of tropical islands stretches more than 100 miles off Florida's southern tip, connected by the famous Overseas Highway. You're surrounded by coral reefs and turquoise water where the Atlantic meets the Gulf of Mexico. It's part Caribbean, part American coastal town, part nowhere else on Earth. But paradise isn't always gentle. Hurricanes slam these islands regularly. Coral reefs are bleaching white from warming waters. Rising seas threaten this fragile chain, where the line between thriving and disappearing stays razor thin. The contrasts hit you everywhere. In Key West, pastel houses line busy streets, where wild roosters strut past tourists, sipping cocktails. Just offshore, the only living coral barrier reef in the continental United States shows serious signs of stress. On Big Pine Key, endangered key deer, no bigger than dogs, dodge traffic on narrow roads, while sunbathers relax on nearby beaches. These islands sit on ancient coral beds and limestone, making them incredibly vulnerable to sea level rise. Most areas rise only a few feet above the waves, yet the waters teem with nurse sharks, manatees, and massive tarpon. The Calusa and Tequesta peoples lived here first. Later came shipwreck salvagers, cigar makers, and Cuban exiles. Ernest Hemingway wrote his novels here. The dry tortugas, reachable only by boat or seaplane, hide coral atolls and crumbling Civil War forts. You cross the bridge from Savannah and the world immediately changes. The air thickens with salt, the wind gets quieter, and Tybee Island rises like a gentle exhale from the sea. Just 18 miles from Savannah's historic streets, this small barrier island packs a big personality. Weather-worn cottages dot the landscape alongside tidal creeks and palm-lined lanes. Time moves slower here than on the mainland. creating a place that feels suspended between past and present. That slowness brings both comfort and concern. Tybee offers sanctuary for visitors seeking escape, but it's also vulnerable. Erosion threatens the shoreline, while hurricanes and rising seas challenge this fragile landscape that generations have called home. The contrasts here tell the island's story. Families pack the beach near the iconic Tybee Pier, while migratory birds nest quietly in distant marshes. Loggerhead sea turtles crawl ashore at night, claiming the same sand where children built castles during the day. History runs deep on Tybee. The island served as a military outpost and colonial lookout point. Its lighthouse, one of the South's oldest, still watches over these shifting shorelines after more than 270 years. Salt marshes wrap around the island like protective arms, filtering water and supporting shrimp, fish, and herons. Tides can rise 8 feet in a single day, turning beach into bayou within hours. Some landscapes don't shout, they hum. Shenandoah is one of them, where ridgelines ripple like old songs and fog drapes the forest like memory. Stretching over 100 miles along the crest of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah National Park is a ribbon of wilderness perched above the Shenandoah Valley. Skyline Drive traces the ridge like a spine, offering views that feel infinite, especially in fall when the mountains ignite in red and gold. You can drive the entire length in a few hours, but the real magic happens when you step away from the overlooks. But for all its tranquility, Shenandoah is a park shaped by tension, between development and preservation, between the visible and the unseen. Below the overlooks are deep hollows where families once lived before the park was formed, their cabins claimed by conservation. Mountain communities with roots stretching back generations were displaced in the 1930s to create this sanctuary. The contrast strikes you immediately. Rocky Appalachian outcrops give way to shadowed coves where black bears forage and waterfalls tumble unseen. Tourists cruise the ridgeline, but just steps away, wilderness reclaims its silence. The Blue Ridge is over 1 billion years old, worn down from once towering peaks into softened, folded hills. Its green veneer hides ancient metamorphic rock shaped by unimaginable forces. Over 1,300 plant species thrive here, alongside bobcats, salamanders, and migrating raptors. The Appalachian Trail runs through its length, drawing hikers into a tradition as old as the hills themselves. They come out of the marsh at dawn, manes tangled with sea spray, eyes wide, hooves slicing through water. The wild ponies of Chincoteague aren't a myth. They're the island's living heartbeat. Off Virginia's eastern shore sits Chincoteague Island, a quiet town separated from the Atlantic by Assateague Island's protected wilderness. While Chincoteague hosts the community with its local shops and restaurants, the neighboring refuge holds the wild. Pine forests stretch toward beaches where herds of feral ponies have roamed for centuries. The island feels suspended between eras. Main Street's ice cream shops and art galleries buzz with summer visitors, while just across the causeway, egrets stalk quiet marshes, and Atlantic wind sweeps over dunes and salt flats. This peaceful balance faces constant pressure from storms, rising tides, and growing tourism. The Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge protects some of the East Coast's last undeveloped beaches. These shores serve as crucial habitat for migratory birds and threatened wildlife. The famous ponies likely descend from shipwrecked Spanish Mustangs, though some believe they were colonial livestock turned wild. Each year during the pony swim, saltwater cowboys herd them across the channel in a tradition over 90 years old. Marguerite Henry's book, Misty of Chincoteague, made these ponies symbols of independence and wild beauty, drawing generations of visitors. Chincoteague isn't just a storybook island, it's a living one where legend meets salt air and wildness remains visible at morning tide. The hills roll like waves frozen in gold. Vineyards stretch toward the horizon, and the light falls softer here. Santa Ynez doesn't announce itself, it settles into you. Nestled between the Santa Ynez Mountains and San Rafael Range in Santa Barbara County, this valley creates a sunlit blend of wine country, ranchland, and small-town California. Though it sits just 30 miles from the Pacific, Santa Ynez feels tucked away, hidden behind the ridgelines and time. The contrast here is elegant but real. Polished tasting rooms sit beside dusty barns. Luxury cars pass horse trailers on winding roads. The land whispers Old West stories while living in the shadow of modern tourism. This is Chumash land, first and foremost. The Santa Ynez Band still maintains a strong presence here, operating the Chumash Casino and preserving traditions older than the Spanish missions that once dominated this region. Oak-dotted hills meet sprawling vineyards where cattle graze near boutique inns. The light shifts constantly throughout each day. Marine fog rolls in during morning hours, blazing sun takes over by noon, and dusk paints the skyline an artist's palette. The valley's unique east-west orientation funnels cool coastal air inland, creating microclimates perfect for growing Pinot Noir, Syrah, and Chardonnay. What if a desert wind, a glacier, and millions of years of erosion worked together to paint a living landscape? That's the story written in the curves of the Palouse. Spread across southwestern Washington and spilling into Idaho, the Palouse creates rolling hills unlike any other place on Earth. These aren't mountains or plains, but soft waves of earth, rising and falling like a frozen sea. In summer, they ripple in greens and golds. In winter, they rest under mist and snow. The beauty feels effortless, but it's actually a fragile trick. These hills are made of loess, which is fine silt left by Ice Age winds. They erode easily. Modern agriculture depends on them, even as it reshapes them every season. You'll see this contrast everywhere. Towering combines crawl across sculpted slopes, harvesting wheat, lentils, and barley. Meanwhile, photographers chase light and shadow from every angle. The hills formed over tens of thousands of years as glacial water and volcanic ash settled together. This created some of the most fertile non-irrigated farmland in the world. The Nez Perce tribe once moved through this region before settlers arrived in the 1800s. Towns like Pullman and Moscow now serve as cultural centers, supported by universities and agriculture. Native prairie is nearly gone, replaced by fields. Yet efforts continue to restore fragments of wildflowers and native grasses and pockets of conservation land. Early morning fog nestles between the hills. Golden light flows over endless curves. A distant grain elevator marks the only sign of civilization for miles. The Palouse is both landform and artwork, constantly in motion. The road turns quiet, the sky gets bigger, and then suddenly, black rock stretches out in every direction. Broken like shattered glass under a desert sun, you've reached Malpais. Located in western New Mexico, Malpais National Monument is a vast volcanic landscape whose name translates to the Badlands. This terrain of lava tubes, collapsed craters, sandstone bluffs, and jagged flows looks otherworldly, even by desert standards. The contrast hits you immediately. Harsh, barren lava fields sit beside fragile ice caves and forests of pinyon and juniper trees. Life exists here, but it's subtle and stubborn, clinging to cracks, blooming after rain, hiding from heat. Picture this: sandstone cliffs glow red at sunset, while the lava below stays black and cold. From above, it looks lifeless. Up close, lizards scurry, ravens circle, and cactus blooms emerge from bare rock. The landscape was shaped by volcanic eruptions. Over the last million years, the most recent lava flows are just 3,000 years old, fresh geologically speaking. Malpais is one of the best preserved basalt fields in the U.S. For the Acoma, Zuni, and other Puebloan peoples, this land is sacred, a spiritual threshold and physical challenge. Ancient trails still wind through the lava, some marked by cairns that have stood for centuries. Scientists study the area's lava tubes for microbial life that could resemble organisms on Mars. Some caves hold ice year-round, even as summer temperatures soar above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The mountains gave Silverton silver, and Silverton gave everything to the mountains. Picture this: you're standing at 9,300 feet above sea level, in one of America's highest towns. Silverton sits deep in Colorado's San Juan Mountains, where dramatic peaks tower over a grid of dusty streets lined with century-old buildings. This place started as a mining boomtown in the 1870s, just a cluster of tents and rough cabins, filled with fortune seekers chasing precious metals. Here's what makes Silverton fascinating. You can sip espresso in the same buildings that once housed rowdy saloons and miners' unions. The contrast hits you immediately. Modern tourists walking past structures where Wild West legends played out their stories. But don't think this town has gone soft. Avalanches and rock slides still shut down the highway every winter, and Silverton gets buried under 150 inches of snow annually. The Ute people called these mountains home long before prospectors arrived with pickaxes and dreams. When the railroad finally reached Silverton in 1882, it brought waves of workers and conflict that shaped the town's rough character. The mountains around you hold incredible geologic wealth: gold, silver, and lead deposits created by volcanic activity millions of years ago. This buried treasure helped build Denver and fund railroads across the West. Today, the narrow-gauge Durango and Silverton train still chugs into town daily during summer, carrying visitors who want to touch living history. Silverton remains caught between mountain and memory, where mining ghosts still walk the boardwalks. The light here is different, softer, salt-tinged, edged, and gray. On Martha's Vineyard, even the wind seems to carry history. "7 miles off the coast of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard is an island of dunes, cliffs, harbors, and history. You can only reach it by boat or plane, which gives it a quiet magnetism. Presidents vacation here, fishermen anchor for life, and stories drift in with the fog. The island straddles contrast perfectly. There's the public face, manicured homes in Edgartown, pastel bikes, and boutique shops. Then there are the hidden layers, storm-battered docks in Menemsha, quiet cemeteries, and fierce winter winds that clear the streets completely. Oak Bluff's gingerbread cottages buzz with summer visitors, while the Aquina Cliffs rise raw and red above the Atlantic. These cliffs are sacred ground to the Wampanoag people, who still live and govern here today. Long before tourists arrived, the vineyard was home to the Wampanoag tribe. Later, it became a hub for whaling captains and freed slaves. It's one of the few places in early America where Black communities could own land and thrive. Glacial retreat sculpted the island, and its shores constantly shift. Freshwater ponds, windswept beaches, and offshore shoals create a unique ecology. Ospreys nest here, striped bass swim the waters, and rare plant species take root. They came chasing gold through snowfields and sawtooth peaks, but what they found was Skagway, a boomtown clinging to the edge of the wild. Picture this, it's 1897, and Skagway is barely a dot on the map. Then gold fever hits. Tens of thousands of stampeders flood into this tiny spot at the head of Alaska's Lynn Canal, all chasing the same dream of striking it rich in the Klondike. Within months, a full-blown city springs up between fjords and glacial valleys. But Skagway always lived on the edge. The population swells to thousands during cruise season, then drops to just a few hundred when winter snow closes the White Pass. Silence returns, and the town holds its breath until spring. Walk through the historic district today, and you'll see this tension everywhere. Wooden boardwalks and preserved saloons from 1898 line the streets, while massive cruise ships dock just yards away. Hikers head into alpine wilderness that starts at the town's back door. This was once the roughest town in the north. Conman Soapy Smith ruled the streets until someone gunned him down in 1898. The White Pass and Yukon Route Railway, carved into the mountains during the gold rush, still runs today, now carrying tourists instead of miners. The Tlingit people used this land as a trade route long before any settlers arrived. Bears, eagles, and mountain goats still roam just beyond town limits, where waterfalls cascade down jagged peaks and weather changes by the hour. Born from fire, shaped by time, and alive with memory, Oahu is more than an island. It's a living system of volcanoes, ecosystems, languages, and lineages that pulses with contradictions you won't find anywhere else. This third largest Hawaiian island holds nearly 70% of the state's population, making it both heartbeat and crossroads. Here, rainforest meets high-rise in ways that seem impossible. Surfboards line city beaches, while centuries of Polynesian tradition flow beneath the rhythm of modern life. The contrasts hit you immediately. Downtown Honolulu's glass towers rise just miles from sacred heiau temples and hidden waterfalls that most visitors never see. Military bases share coastline with protected marine reserves. Luxury resorts sit minutes from fishing villages, where mo'olelo oral histories still shape how people understand the land around them. On winter mornings, surfers ride North Shore giants that can reach 60 feet high. Meanwhile, quiet tide pools form in the black lava rock along the east coast, where you can spot Hawaiian green sea turtles resting in shallow water. Hikers trace ridge trails through the Ko'olau Mountains, following paths carved by millions of years of rain and volcanic uplift. Two ancient shield volcanoes created this island, Waianae and Ko'olau, and their remnants now cradle fertile valleys where taro and coffee grow. The coral reefs surrounding Oahu support over 400 fish species, though invasive algae and rising seas threaten these underwater gardens. The silence out here has texture, gritty, sun-scorched, and humming just beneath the surface. In Joshua Tree, even the stillness seems alive. Picture yourself standing where two deserts meet in Southern California. Joshua Tree National Park straddles the Colorado and Mojave deserts, creating a world of contradictions. Granite monoliths rise from open basins, while alien-shaped trees claw at the sky. Two desert ecosystems collide here, making a landscape both hostile and hauntingly beautiful. The lower Colorado desert spreads sparse and flat, with creosote bushes and spiky ocotillo plants stretching to the horizon. Climb higher into the Mojave Zone and everything changes. Joshua trees, twisted, spiky, and oddly human-like, rise among massive boulders like frozen dancers caught mid-performance. These rock formations started as underground magma over 100 million years ago. Flash floods and endless erosion sculpted them into the rounded shapes you see today. The Joshua Tree itself is actually a giant yucca that depends on one specific moth species for pollination. It's a fragile partnership that took millions of years to develop. This land belonged to the Chemehuevi and Serrano peoples long before it became a national park. They hunted here, gathered plants, and left petroglyphs that still mark sacred sites. Later, desert mystics and musicians from Graham Parsons to U2 found inspiration to these silent spaces. You don't just stumble into the Ozarks. Someone takes you there. down switchbacks cut into stone, past old cemeteries and porch dogs, into a land where stories live longer than people. Spread across southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, the Ozark Plateau rises from ancient hills, limestone caves, and spring-fed rivers. In Missouri, it's less about sweeping views and more about what's hidden: deep hollows, cold creeks, and communities tucked between ridges. This isn't a place that shows off. It keeps its secrets. The Ozarks live in contradiction. Rich culture meets poor resources. Stunning beauty shadows economic struggle. Locals know every creek bend and cave entrance, while outsiders often miss the point entirely. Drive through Branson and you'll see neon lights and music theaters packed with tourists. Drive 5 miles east and you'll find box turtles crossing dirt roads and old men gigging frogs by headlamp in the summer heat. The geology tells its own story. The karst landscape holds sinkholes, caves, and one of the largest concentrations of freshwater springs in America. Rivers like the Current, Jack's Fork, and 11 Point run clear and fast, cutting through rock laid down over 300 million years ago. The water stays cold year-round, fed by underground springs that never see sunlight. The people carry layers too. Scotch-Irish descendants, Native American roots, and Civil War-era settlers mixed into communities where oral traditions, herbal medicine, and fiddle music persist. Some areas stay isolated, while others change. Retirees and developers push into old homesteads. What happens when 150 million years of wind, water, and pressure shape sand into flame? In Nevada's Valley of Fire, geology puts on its most theatrical performance. Just an hour from Las Vegas, Valley of Fire State Park feels like another planet. This red rock dreamscape of eroded sandstone arches, petrified dunes, and towering formations glows when the sun strikes them just right. Nevada's oldest state park holds both deep time and constant motion. The extremes define it. Blazing temperatures, parched earth, and fragile formations coexist with delicate wildlife, ancient petroglyphs, and roads cut for film crews and tourists. It's beautiful, but not gentle. Fire Canyon's jagged cliffs burn crimson at sunset, while just beyond, desert bighorn sheep move silently through pale washes. The landscape looks barren, but it teems with resilient life, adapted to extremes. The Aztec sandstone found here was formed during the Jurassic period from ancient dunes, compressed, tilted, and sculpted by time. The brilliant reds come from iron oxide, while the swirling striations tell a story of shifting desert winds and long-lost rivers. This land is sacred to the southern Paiute and ancestral Puebloan peoples. Petroglyphs carved into stone at sites like Atlatl Rock speak to centuries of ceremony, travel, and survival in a place outsiders once saw as uninhabitable. Valley of Fire has appeared in sci-fi films and car commercials, but visitation is rising, along with erosion and risk to its delicate features. This masterwork of time burns with color that lives only in the desert. The road twists like a vine through rain and mist, and by the time you reach Hana, the island feels quieter, older, like it's remembering itself. Every turn reveals another waterfall cascading down moss-covered cliffs, while the Pacific crashes against black volcanic rocks below. On Maui's remote eastern coast, Hana is more than a destination. It's a state of stillness. The legendary Hana Highway brings you here through 52 miles of winding, waterfall-laced drive, through rainforest and cliffside turns. The town greets you not with grandeur, but with deep calm. Hana is defined by its isolation, preserved because it's difficult to reach, protected by both geography and community resolve. But that same distance creates tension between tradition and tourism, between preservation and access. While West Maui buzzes with resorts, Hana's coastline remains rugged and uncrowded. Taro patches grow beside black sand beaches. Locals gather at the tiny school or fish off volcanic cliffs, far from the island's commercial glow. The region is a biodiversity treasure, with native forests, sea cliffs, and endangered Hawaiian monk seals. Abundant rainfall feeds lush gulches and waterfalls that pour into the Pacific. Hana is a stronghold of Hawaiian culture. Many residents are native Hawaiian, and traditions such as la'au lapa'au herbal healing, hula, and subsistence fishing remain part of daily life. The area carries deep ancestral connection, evident in sacred sites like Pi'ilani Hawaii, the largest temple in Polynesia. They came for coal, stayed for powder, and now bloom fields of wildflowers tell a story the miners never could. Crested Butte doesn't change fast, just hard and with beauty. Picture this mountain town at nearly 9,000 feet in Colorado's Elk Mountains. Back in the 1800s, miners dug coal from these peaks through brutal winters that lasted 8 months. Today, those same snowfalls bring world-class skiing, and summer transforms the landscape into Colorado's wildflower capital. The town sits in constant tension between old and new. Bright Victorian storefronts painted in blues and yellows line Elk Avenue, while raw granite peaks tower overhead. Tourists flood in for mountain biking and backcountry skiing, but locals fight hard to keep their authentic character. You won't find chain restaurants or cookie-cutter hotels here. The massive Butte itself rises 12,000 feet, a volcanic remnant that dominates the valley. Come July, alpine meadows explode with Indian paintbrush, columbine, and lupin in colors so intense they look fake. Elk roam the surrounding Gunnison National Forest, and fat marmots whistle warnings from rocky outcrops. This place attracts an interesting mix of people. Artists live next to fourth-generation ranchers. Ski bums work alongside environmental scientists. The town throws quirky festivals that reflect this creative spirit. From mountain bike races to parades featuring anything goes. Housing costs squeeze out longtime residents, and climate change threatens the snowpack that drives the economy. Yet Crested Butte keeps its independent soul. It's a place that makes you slow down and earn every mountain view. Time runs differently in Zion, not in hours, but in layers. Every wall is a fossil of wind and water, every canyon a sentence in the Earth's long story. In southwestern Utah, Zion National Park stands like a cathedral of stone. Towering Navajo sandstone cliffs rise from narrow slot canyons, while high plateaus stretch above the Virgin River's path. This isn't just erosion at work. It's creation through destruction. Mormon settlers named it Zion, recognizing something sacred carved into the rock itself. Zion lives in extremes that would challenge anyone. Blazing summer heat gives way to sudden flash floods. Above, stillness dominates the high country. Below, the river churns through narrow passages. Over 4 million visitors arrive each year, testing how well this sacred space can handle modern crowds. Angel's Landing towers nearly 1,500 feet above the canyon floor, offering views that open up the entire sky. Meanwhile, the Narrows forces you to wade through the river itself, with canyon walls only 20 feet apart in some sections. One experience lifts you above the world, the other tucks you deep inside the earth. These cliffs form part of the Grand Staircase, layered sedimentary rocks that stretch across southern Utah. The Virgin River carved this canyon over millions of years, its quiet flow hiding incredible shaping power. Southern Paiute people lived here long before tourists arrived, leaving petroglyphs on canyon walls. Desert bighorn sheep and California condors call these cliffs home, while hidden springs create hanging gardens in the most unexpected places. You round a bend, and suddenly the canyon drops, deeper than you thought California could go. Granite walls rise like ancient fortresses, and the air feels carved as much as breathed. This is your first glimpse into Kings Canyon, where the Sierra Nevada reveals one of its best-kept secrets. Tucked beside its more famous sibling, Sequoia National Park, Kings Canyon stretches across glacial valleys, thunderous rivers, and high Sierra wilderness. At over 8,000 feet deep, this canyon rivals Yosemite in grandeur. Yet it remains quieter, wilder, less scripted. Most visitors never venture beyond the main road. Kings Canyon exists in stunning contrasts. Towering sequoias stand against roaring rivers. Gentle meadows hide behind granite cliffs. You can drive a paved road into its depths, but beyond that, only backcountry trails lead further into the wilderness. Zumwalt Meadow sits perfectly serene beneath 1,000-foot cliffs, while Mist Falls thunders down the canyon wall just miles away. The South Fork of the Kings River crashes over boulders that haven't moved in centuries, its sound always echoing through the granite corridors. Glaciers carved this canyon during the last ice age, revealing ancient granite bedrock and creating one of the deepest canyons in North America. The Mono and Yokuts peoples moved seasonally through these lands for thousands of years. In the 1800s, John Moore explored the region, calling it a rival to Yosemite, wild, untamed, and a temple lighted from within. Not a park, but a nation of forests. Not a trail, but a network of memory. The Adirondacks don't just surround you, they absorb you. Picture this: 6 million acres stretching across northern New York, making it larger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, and Glacier combined. But here's what makes the Adirondacks different from every other protected space in America. This isn't untouched wilderness. It's something far more complex. A living mix of forest, small towns, crystal lakes, and strict laws that somehow work together. Unlike national parks, over half the land here belongs to private owners. Yet every acre stays protected under New York's Forever Wild Clause, written right into the state constitution. Ice-covered peaks rise above mirror-still lakes, while logging trucks rumble past hiking trailheads. You'll hear loons calling across the water, just as the local general store opens its doors down the road. The geology tells an incredible story. These mountains aren't part of the Appalachians at all. They're a separate dome of ancient rock, still slowly rising from the earth. Some of the world's oldest exposed bedrock lies beneath your feet, carved and polished by glaciers over millions of years. The Mohawk and Abenaki peoples knew these forests long before wealthy city folks discovered them as vacation retreats in the 1800s. Today, moose wander through wetlands, while black bears roam second-growth forests, still healing from old logging cuts. The Adirondacks prove that wilderness doesn't need to be empty to stay wild. It's negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sky glows green. You're not hallucinating. You're in Fairbanks, where science meets survival, and the aurora dances over frozen ground. This city sits just below the Arctic Circle in Alaska's vast interior, where light and temperature define everything. Summer brings sun that barely sets for months. Winter flips the script with darkness that stretches for weeks. These extremes aren't just weather, they shape how people live, how buildings get built, and even how time feels different. Fairbanks exists in fascinating contrast. You'll find a major university town with world-class research facilities, but also a frontier outpost where snow tires and wood stoves aren't optional. Modern coffee shops serve lattes next to homesteads heated entirely by firewood. Drive 5 minutes from downtown and you won't see another human for hours. Some residents choose to live off-grid, others have no choice. The University of Alaska Fairbanks and its Geophysical Institute make this one of the world's top spots for studying space weather, permafrost, and climate change. Scientists flock here because Fairbanks sits directly under the auroral oval, prime real estate for watching the northern lights dance. Long before gold rush settlers arrived in the early 1900s, Alaska native peoples like the Dena'ina and Tanana Athabascan called this home. Their knowledge of surviving here spans generations. The boreal forest around Fairbanks hosts lynx, moose, and wolves, while the permafrost below slowly thaws, tilting trees and shifting ground in slow-motion transformation. It breathes, it boils, it waits. Yellowstone isn't just a park. It's a living remnant of Earth's rawest self, where the ground pulses with heat and history. Picture walking across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho all at once. That's Yellowstone for you. When they made it the world's first national park back in 1872, they had no idea what was really happening underneath. Below those forests and rivers sits one of the largest active supervolcanoes on Earth, quietly shaping everything you see above. Here's what makes Yellowstone so incredible. It's incredibly alive because of what's buried beneath. Geysers shoot water 300 feet high, while hot springs bubble beside tiny wildflowers. You'll see bison gathering near boiling pools, their breath mixing with sulfurous steam. Old Faithful erupts every 90 minutes, like clockwork. But walk a few hundred yards and you'll find geysers that surprise everyone. The Yellowstone caldera formed after a massive eruption 600,000 years ago. Today, that shallow magma chamber still drives every hot spring and geyser you see, Scientists constantly monitor earthquakes and ground movement because this landscape keeps changing. You're looking at the heart of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, one of the largest intact temperate ecosystems on the planet. Grizzlies, elk, and wolves share space with more than half of North America's geysers. The Shoshone, Crow, and Blackfeet nations lived here for thousands of years before it became a park. Yellowstone shows us what Earth really is, not what we wish it to be. The road runs out, the land narrows to a ribbon, and suddenly you're in Provincetown, where the sea surrounds, the sky opens, and the air feels saltier with possibility. Tucked at the tip of Cape Cod, Provincetown, or P-Town, sits at both a literal and figurative edge. This is where the Pilgrims first touched American soil in 1620, and where artists, outsiders, and dreamers have been landing ever since. Surrounded by dunes, light, and the Atlantic, the town feels like a threshold between land and sea, past and future, tradition and reinvention. Provincetown thrives on contrast. In summer, Commercial Street pulses with parades, galleries, and rainbow flags. But just steps away are wind-blown beaches, salt marshes, and complete silence. It's celebratory and contemplative at the same time, deeply rooted yet constantly in motion. Picture this: lobstermen haul traps at dawn, while drag queens in sequins bike past white clapboard homes. Riders arrive seeking solitude, while performers chase stage lights. Whales breach offshore as fog rolls in like a curtain. The Cape itself was shaped by glaciers over 15,000 years ago, leaving behind this dynamic, shifting spit of sand. Provincetown sits within the Cape Cod National Seashore, protected dunes, tidal flats, and pine forests that shelter foxes, migratory birds, and rare coastal plants. Stone shouldn't float, and yet in arches, it does. Balanced on fins, framing the sky, defying gravity one erosion-sculpted curve at a time. In eastern Utah near Moab, Arches National Park holds over 2,000 natural stone arches, the highest concentration on Earth. This desert gallery showcases rock that seems to stretch, bend, and levitate into forms that appear impossible. But here's what makes it incredible. These formations are born from fragility. every arch you see is slowly collapsing. The same forces that created them work constantly to undo them, grain by grain. Delicate arch stands alone like a portal in the sky, while landscape arch spans longer than a football field, yet remains thin as a rib. You'll walk past towering fins, slot canyons, and bridges of rock that feel both ancient and temporary. The park sits on a thick layer of salt deposited by an evaporated sea 300 million years ago. Rock layers above shifted, cracked, and eroded over time. Wind, rain, and freeze-thaw cycles hollowed out today's iconic arches, a process still very much alive. This region served as ancestral lands for the Ute and Paiute people, who left petroglyphs and cultural sites near the park's borders. Despite the arid appearance, cryptobiotic soil supports desert wildflowers, ravens, lizards, and bighorn sheep, all adapted to extremes. You walk to the edge, expecting a canyon, and find a chasm instead. Sheer, silent, and dizzying, Black Canyon doesn't unfold, it drops. The Gunnison River carved this gorge in western Colorado over millions of years, creating depths that plunge over 2,700 feet at the deepest points. Some of the steepest cliffs in North America rise here, and the canyon earned its name because sunlight barely reaches the bottom. Parts of the floor stay in shadow nearly all day long. This isn't like the Grand Canyon with its wide, sweeping views. Black Canyon feels narrow, dark, and sharp-edged. You experience vertigo more than vistas here. The painted wall towers, 2,250 vertical feet above you, streaked with ancient rock veins that tell stories spanning eons. Below, the Gunnison River roars through corridors, only 40 feet wide in some places, creating whitewater that once stopped early explorers cold and now challenges expert kayakers. The canyon cuts through Precambrian gneiss and schist, over 1.7 billion years old, some of the oldest exposed rock you'll find in America. The river's steep gradients gave it power to carve through this ancient stone faster than other Rocky Mountain rivers. The Ute people knew these rim trails well, but 1800s explorers struggled to chart the depths. A determined crew finally surveyed the inner gorge in 1901, rafting and bushwhacking through 48 miles of raw canyon. Today, peregrine falcons nest on the cliff ledges, while mule deer browse at the rim. But the real life force here remains geological: pressure, erosion, and fracture working together. The road ends and the mountains rise. Waterfalls streak down black rock, clouds skim the peaks, and the harbor waits like a secret. Welcome to Valdez. Picture yourself driving into a place where massive peaks wrap around you on three sides, while the ocean stretches endlessly ahead. That's Valdez, Alaska, tucked deep into Prince William Sound, like nature's own fortress. This isn't just another coastal town. It's a place where contradictions live side by side, creating something truly unique. Here's what makes Valdez fascinating. Ice floats in the harbor, while pink salmon pack the rivers. Massive oil tankers dock at the Trans-Alaska Pipeline Terminal, while sea otters drift lazily offshore. Snow piles up over 300 inches each year, making this one of America's snowiest cities. Yet somehow, life thrives in these extremes. The Chugach Mountains surrounding Valdez hold glaciers with names like Columbia, Worthington, and Shoup, remnants from the Ice Age that still carve the coastline today. These cold, nutrient-rich waters support whales, sea lions, and countless eagles that soar above the fishing boats and cruise ships alike. But Valdez knows tragedy too. The 1964 Good Friday earthquake wiped out the original town, forcing residents to rebuild miles away. Later, the Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1989 made this small town the center of one of America's worst environmental disasters. Valdez survives because it adapts to whatever nature throws at it, and captivates visitors because it never compromises its wild character. You arrive expecting beauty, and instead find reverence. Yosemite doesn't just impress you, it humbles you. Step into California's Sierra Nevada, where Yosemite National Park spreads across nearly 1,200 square miles of granite domes, alpine meadows, glacial valleys, and towering waterfalls. At its heart sits Yosemite Valley, a mile wide and carved by ice, framed by icons like El Capitan and Half Dome. Here's the thing about Yosemite. It's one of the most visited parks in America, and one of the most fragile. Its grandeur attracts millions, but its ecosystems, trails, and wildlife strain under pressure of foot traffic, climate change, and time. The contrasts hit you immediately. Mist from Yosemite Falls chills your face, while summer sun bakes the valley floor. Bears and bobcats still roam here, even as shuttle buses glide past. Granite walls that seem eternal are in constant transformation, shedding boulders, cracking, eroding. This landscape took millions of years to create. Tectonic uplift and Ice Age glaciers sculpted what you see today. Granite plutons formed deep underground, then revealed by endless erosion. Glacial carving widened valleys, smoothed domes, and left behind hanging waterfalls and polished cliffs. The Awa-Nichi people lived in Yosemite Valley for thousands of years, calling it Awani. When settlers and the U.S. government arrived in the 1800s, indigenous communities were forcibly removed. Their connection to this land endures today. Yosemite contains 5 major vegetation zones, from oak woodlands to alpine tundra, supporting over 400 species of vertebrates. Some places feel whispered into existence. Hana is one of them, a curve of bay, a cradle of mist, a valley shaped by time and gods alike. On the north shore of Kauai, Hana stretches beyond what most people call a town. This is a landscape of memory. The crescent-shaped bay sits framed by waterfalls and taro fields, beneath cliffs where clouds linger like old stories. You can feel the land breathing with continuity, from Ioi Kalo taro terraces to chants carried on the wind. But Hana holds a delicate balance. Its beauty draws visitors, yet its spirit resists becoming spectacle. Locals speak of aloha aina, love for the land, not as sentiment but as obligation. Tourism brings income and erosion, curiosity and intrusion in equal measure. Walk through town and you'll see the contrasts everywhere. Surfboards lean against century-old churches. Chickens cross rain-soaked roads as luxury SUVs idle nearby. Paddleboarders glide across the Hana River, while farmers wade barefoot through knee-deep mud, tending taro just as their ancestors did. This valley serves as one of Hawaii's most important agricultural wetlands. The patchwork of taro patches gets sustained by the Hanalei River and ringed by conservation lands. The bay functions as a marine estuary, supporting reef fish, endangered birds, and migrating humpback whales offshore. This is a place of mo'olelo, oral history, where ancient chiefs once ruled and hula was born of rain and stone. Hanalei isn't just visited, it's listened to. You drive a narrow road between ocean and sound, sea oats swaying, sand drifting like snow. The land feels temporary because it is. The Outer Banks were never meant to stay still. Stretching over 100 miles along North Carolina's coast, these barrier islands shift constantly with tides, storms, and sea level change. They separate the Atlantic Ocean from the mainland's sounds and marshes, creating a world of salt air, wind-blown pines, and endless sky. But the Outer Banks are defined by impermanence. Shorelines erode, dunes migrate, and towns rebuild again and again. History gets buried by hurricanes and exposed by the next storm. The contrasts here feel surreal. Families vacation in beach houses on stilts, while ghost towns lie beneath the sand. Wild horses roam the dunes of Corolla, while fighter jets fly training routes above Hatteras. Lighthouses stand tall, even as the land beneath them retreats inch by inch. These islands formed from rising seas and sediment deposited by ancient rivers. Today, they're among the most dynamic coastal systems in America, moving westward as the ocean rises and storms reshape their edges. Sea level rise and increased hurricane activity are speeding up that process. The Algonquian-speaking peoples lived here long before colonists arrived. The lost colony of Roanoke, the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk, and centuries of shipwrecks have all left their mark. Locals called bankers maintain a tight-knit maritime culture, rooted in resilience and sea lore. The Outer Banks aren't permanent, but they're powerful, a place where land, memory, and motion collide, and where living means adapting to the tide. The mountains don't rise, they settle. Layered like memory, soft as breath, the Smokies hold more than beauty. They hold everything that came before. Picture yourself standing where Tennessee meets North Carolina, surrounded by peaks that wear mist like a gentle cloak. The Great Smoky Mountains draw more visitors than any other national park in America, yet their blue-gray haze keeps secrets older than the Rockies themselves. These ancient ridges formed hundreds of millions of years ago, making them geologic elders in a land of younger peaks. Don't let their gentle appearance fool you. The Smokies have survived centuries of logging that stripped entire mountainsides bare. Today, millions of hikers crowd popular trails, while rare salamanders hide in forgotten hollows just steps away. You'll find traffic jams in Cades Cove, while elk roam peacefully in Cataloochee Valley. Black bears wander past old homestead foundations, where mountain families once lived. This misty wilderness supports over 19,000 species, including fireflies that blink in perfect sync on summer nights. More types of salamanders live here than anywhere else on Earth. Cherokee families walked these paths for thousands of years before European settlers carved farms from the valleys. When the park formed in the 1930s, entire communities disappeared, leaving behind stone chimneys and family graveyards. The Smokies aren't just mountains. They're living stories where nature, memory, and legend breathe together beneath ancient mist. You don't take Route 66 to get somewhere fast. You take it to remember, to wander, to feel the country change beneath your wheels. It's not a road, it's a story you drive through. Stretching nearly 2,500 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica, Route 66 once connected the industrial heartland to the Pacific Dream. Established in 1926, it passed through 8 states and countless lives, from the flatlands of Illinois to the deserts of Arizona and California's glittering edge. The highway became America's main street, carrying hopes and dreams westward. But Route 66 is no longer whole. Decommissioned in 1985, it was slowly replaced by interstates, bypasses, and exits to nowhere. Yet pieces remain: a motel neon flickering in New Mexico, a rusted diner in Texas, a cracked 2-lane road baking in the Mojave sun. It survives through memory and momentum. On one end, Chicago's skyscrapers rise into Great Lakes wind. On the other, the Santa Monica Pier meets salt air and endless ocean. In between stretch St. Louis arches, Dust Bowl ghost towns, family diners serving pie since 1952, wigwam motels shaped like teepees, and long stretches where silence fills your car and the horizon seems to go on forever. Route 66 carried migrants west during the Great Depression, became a military supply route during World War II, and later symbolized freedom in the golden age of American road trips. Drive-ins, diners, gas stations with full service, and muscle cars racing towards sunset. This highway saw it all. Route 66 moves through many Americas, telling not one story, but thousands, woven across time and asphalt. You smell it before you see it. Sulfur and steam rising from the earth, curling into alpine air. Steamboat Springs isn't just a ski town, it's a town built on heat, snow, and grit. Nestled in northwest Colorado's Yampa Valley, this mountain town has deep roots that run geothermal, agricultural, and cultural. While it's famous now for ski slopes and Olympic athletes, the name comes from natural hot springs that still bubble and steam beneath the streets. One spring used to make sounds like a paddle wheel turning upriver, giving the town its name, though that particular spring has gone silent. This place exists between elements: snow and steam, ranchers and skiers, old homesteads next to high-speed lifts. You'll find dusty boots and coffee shops, and cattle drives on the edge of town. Champagne powder draws skiers from around the world, while a few blocks away, you can soak in sulfur-centered mineral springs used for centuries. Ski jumps rise next to weathered barns. Elk wander through neighborhoods. The region sits above fault lines and volcanic activity that feed dozens of hot springs. The Yampa River, one of Colorado's last free-flowing waterways, winds through the valley, creating wetlands that sustain winter wildlife. The Ute people lived seasonally here long before settlers arrived, using the springs for healing. In the 20th century, Steamboat became Ski Town, USA, producing more Winter Olympians than anywhere else, yet it still hosts rodeos and cowboy parades. The USA is vast, breathtaking, and packed with wonders that feel straight out of a dream. If this adventure stirred your sense of wonder, hit subscribe. There's a whole continent of stories still waiting to be told.